From the moment Walker, Texas Ranger blazed onto TV screens in 1993, audiences felt the unmistakable heat of Texas sun, the clang of outlaw spurs, and the iron-willed certainty that justice, swift, uncompromising, and often delivered by a carefully aimed roundhouse kick, would always prevail. Yet beyond the sets lined with cottonwood dust and the choreographed brawls that thrilled millions, lived a community of performers whose real stories were richer, more turbulent, and far more poignant than any episode arc. Their shared dream of making art collided with wearisome night shoots, cross-country press tours, and the private wounds no script could bandage. This series captivated us with its promise that courage beats corruption, that loyalty conquers fear, and that even the most unyielding frontier can be tamed by people who believe in something greater than themselves. But heroism costs, even in Hollywood. When the director called cut, these actors walked off the backlot into personal deserts of divorce papers, bankrupt hopes, chronic illness, and silent battles with grief. They balanced fame against fading health, held tight to families splintering under spotlight glare, and wrestled with questions no TV audience could answer. How do you stay strong when the role ends? Who stands beside you when the badge is just plastic prop? In honoring 10 of these fallen Rangers, we trace how each carved a singular path through hardship, turned pain into performance, and left footprints that guide us decades later. Their triumphs remind us that talent thrives even when typecasting cages it. Their tragedies reveal that relentless perseverance often comes at a price close to unbearable. Each life is a cautionary tale and a celebration, a testament to human complexity behind episodic simplicity. Their memories remain woven into the moral fabric of fans who still stream reruns and mouth the lines before the actors speak. Today, we revisit their legacies not as footnotes to Chuck Norris's legend, but as fully realized, complicated chronicles of resilience and vulnerability. So let the credits of nostalgia roll back. Let us step through the saloon doors of yesterday, past the flicker of studio lights, into stories where fists flew on cue, but heartbreak struck unscripted. This is a journey into courage unglamorized, into sorrow untelevised, and into dignity earned outside the frame. The Rangers we knew on Wednesday nights were mighty. The humans behind them, mightier still. Clarence Gilyard Jr. entered Walker with a grin that made viewers trust him instantly, a spark of energy that counterbalanced Walker's stoic silence. Raised in a military family, Clarence learned early to adapt fast and listen harder than he spoke. Those habits shaped James Trevette, tech-savvy, forward-thinking, and soulfully loyal. But they also shaped a man who buried private struggles beneath unwavering courtesy. Off-camera crew members remember him sneaking back onto set after 16-hour days just to rehearse lines so co-stars could get home sooner. That same selflessness stretched thin at home, where two marriages crumbled under the grind of location shoots and fan conventions. Week-long absences became months-long gaps. Phone calls to 6 children became sporadic postcards. Yet Clarence never quit searching for balance. When the series wrapped, he turned toward academia, teaching stagecraft in Las Vegas and quoting scripture to students who expected celebrity tales and instead found a mentor preaching discipline and grace. Unknown to most, a degenerative illness attacked his lungs, forcing him to decline lucrative cameos he'd once coveted. Even as breath shortened, he typed fervently into a battered laptop, drafting textbooks, lesson plans, and heartfelt emails to estranged kids who sometimes replied, sometimes didn't. On November 28, 2022, at 66, Clarence passed peacefully, the final chapter of a life lived in generous service. His will directed scholarship funds for under-resourced actors and left motorcycles, each lovingly restored, to the sons and daughters whose childhood birthdays he too often missed. In death, he kept a promise he'd struggled to keep in life, to be present, to give more than he took, and to remind the world that steadfast kindness is a Ranger's truest weapon. Woody Watson's presence on Walker was quiet thunder, an understated Ranger who spoke little, observed much, and could dismantle a villain's ego with a single measured glare. That restraint mirrored the man himself. Raised in rural Oklahoma, Woody found solace breaking mustangs and mending fences under endless prairie skies. Acting arrived accidentally after a traveling theater troupe spotted his rugged frame and magnetic eyes at a county fair. Stardom never fit comfortably. Between seasons, he retreated to a modest ranch outside Dallas, where fame meant little beside honest labor and the company of his teenage daughter, Rachel. But when Rachel died in a late-night car crash, grief burrowed deep. Whiskey offered numbness. Isolation felt safer than sympathy he couldn't bear to receive. A second marriage shattered beneath silent sorrow, leaving Woody alone with weather-worn movie posters curling on barn walls. Neighbors recall seeing him ride an aging roan at dusk, murmuring lines from Shakespeare into the wind. A method actor rehearsing for roles Hollywood never called him to play. On January 27, 1999, natural causes claimed him at 50. At the funeral, former stunt coordinators spoke of his generosity, of wrap party envelopes slipped to underpaid crew. Back at the ranch, reporters noted the meager estate: a pickup, a few pistols, a Bible beside Rachel's photograph. What seemed small in monetary value loomed large in testament. A man who measured wealth by sunsets shared and burdens lifted, not by box office metrics or magazine spreads. Floyd Westerman's casting as Uncle Ray injected Walker with ancestral gravity. A celebrated musician and activist long before Hollywood beckoned, Floyd carried Dakota wisdom in every syllable, turning guest spots into cultural education for mainstream viewers. But each breakthrough carried personal sacrifice. Widowed early, he balanced touring schedules with bedtime stories by payphone. Recording sessions funded school supplies. Protest rallies stole hours of sleep. Hollywood admired his authenticity, yet often tried packaging him into cliché. Floyd refused. He rewrote dialogue to remove stereotypes, schooled writers on spiritual protocols, and once halted production until a sacred object was treated with proper respect. That principled stand sometimes cost him roles, but it strengthened a legacy beyond ratings. On spare weekends, he played benefit concerts for water rights lawsuits, his baritone weaving ancestral lullabies into modern protest anthems. Leukemia stalked him for years. Even hospital stays turned into impromptu classrooms where he taught nurses native phrases and history glossed over in textbooks. On December 13, 2007, at 71, he journeyed west one final time. True to form, most of his $1 million estate, royalties, guitars, woven blankets, went to educational foundations on reservations. In Living and Leaving, Floyd proved that fame grows most powerfully when watered by unwavering integrity. Ned Romero spent decades walking Hollywood's margins, guesting on westerns, historical dramas, and sci-fi epics, usually as the one-note native foil written by non-native pens. Each paycheck carried both gratitude and quiet shame. Then came Judge Henry Five Kills, a character who balanced tribal heritage with legal intellect, finally granting Ned space to breathe freely on screen. But personal storms still raged. He and his screenwriter wife mourned a daughter lost to leukemia, an agony that rewired Ned's relationship to time. Between shoots, he apprenticed himself to elder carvers in New Mexico, shaping cedar masks with lines of rage and redemption. Friends visiting his hillside Los Angeles house recall incense curling around unfinished sculptures, jazz softly playing, and Ned whispering stories that began in one language and ended in another. At 90, on November 4th, 2017, natural causes ushered him into the next world. He left behind a legacy bigger than his resume, scholarships for indigenous filmmakers, a binder of letters challenging studios to hire cultural consultants, and carvings now displayed in museums that once rejected him. Judge Five Kills may have been a minor television character, but Ned Romero became a major architect of on-screen dignity. Whenever the camera panned across Mabel Chupé's diner, viewers felt the comfort of Lou Hancock's gentle smile, a cinematic hug. Her journey began in traveling repertory theaters where 12-hour bus rides ended with makeshift stages in drafty gymnasiums. That grind taught Lou to cherish craft over clout, but it also kept family life perpetually postponed. She shared a tiny bungalow with her brother Charlie, whose schizophrenia demanded constant vigilance. Audition calls were choreographed around medication schedules. Callbacks were often declined outright. When cancer crept in, Lou faced it the way she faced every challenge. Quietly, with dog-eared mystery novels on the nightstand and a stack of unanswered fan letters she swore she'd reply to, "Once I feel a little better." she never found that day. December 1st, 1995 took her at 71. In her modest will, she asked only that her niece donate unsold theater programs to aspiring actors who couldn't afford classes. Today, young performers leaf through those weathered playbills, finding notes scrawled in margins. Play the truth. If you forget the line, breathe. The heart remembers. Lou's roles were brief, but her echoes linger in every actor who chooses sincerity over spotlight. Noble Willingham's gravelly laugh and encyclopedic Texas anecdotes turned C.D.'s bar into the show's emotional hearth. Off-screen, Noble campaigned fiercely for political causes, igniting spirited debates on set that ended with affectionate handshakes. Yet conviction can isolate. His marriage strained under public scrutiny. His children drifted, weary of reporters mining family dinners for sound bites. Palm Springs neighbors saw him take sunrise walks, staring at desert horizons as if searching for a past he'd outpaced. Within his mid-century home, he curated vintage jukeboxes and framed photos of small-town stages where his acting dream first flickered. He'd pause before each snapshot, remembering the low ceilings, the echo of applause sparse yet sincere. January 17, 2004, age 72, he died quietly, Sinatra spinning on vinyl. He left behind cars polished to showroom gleam and a handwritten note. Give half of everything to the places that taught me stories. Museums in Texas now showcase his memorabilia. Libraries in rural counties bear his donations. Noble's final statement wasn't broadcast on C-SPAN or Entertainment Tonight. It lives in backpacks of school kids reading books his generosity bought. If martial arts are poetry of motion, Robert Wall was Walt Whitman. His friendship with Bruce Lee birthed legends. Sparring sessions so intense they left dents in studio drywall. When Walker cast him as Billy, fans saw a fighter. The man himself felt like a father scrambling for catharsis. The tragic motorcycle accident that killed his son pierced every kata, every meditation. He blamed fate, then bikes, then himself. Robert poured grief into teaching, insisting students bow not just to sensei, but to every person who ever believed you could be more. He offered free classes to foster care teens, telling them the body remembers both trauma and triumph, and training rewrites that memory. His Los Angeles dojo displayed trophies earned across continents, and a locked glass case containing his son's helmet, a silent vow to protect other children where he could not protect his own. Natural causes ended his journey, January 30th, 2022 at 82, yet his foundation thrives. Scholarships in his son's name send underprivileged youth to international tournaments. On championship mats from Manila to Madrid, fighters kneel and whisper Osu in honor of a man who showed the world that broken hearts can still guard others from harm. Eloy Casados carried the badge on screen, but off-screen he bore heavier burdens. A father's suicide, a son's spiral into addiction, an industry that pigeonholed him as spiritual sidekick. Born on a reservation where opportunity felt like rumor, Eloy treated each audition as a chance to kick open the door for indigenous representation. He succeeded, but doors sometimes slam back. Between shoots, he organized youth art programs, believing a paintbrush could divert even the most determined gang initiation. At rap parties, he'd vanish early, rushing to county jails for late-night visitation hours with his son Julian. Guards learned to expect Eloy's calm voice echoing through plexiglass partitions, quoting lines Julian missed seeing him deliver. Cancer spread as scripts grew scarce, but he filmed educational PSAs from his hospital bed, urging Native teens to own their narratives. April 19, 2016, closed his story at 66. In his bungalow, relatives found canvases Julian painted during rehab, vivid deserts, soaring eagles, proof that Eloy's faith had birthed color, even in darkness. Today, tribal youth centers screen his episodes not just for entertainment, but as study guides in perseverance. When Mara Adams joined Walker in 2000, she was decades older than most co-stars, yet wielded the sharp wit of a playwright still hungry for opening night. Early fame arrived in 1960s soap operas, but studio demands clashed with motherhood. Her daughter Heather grew up backstage, rolling her eyes at boom microphones and yearning for a life beyond cue cards. A bitter divorce left Mara financially secure, but emotionally adrift. She filled rooms with antique clocks, so something in the house keeps ticking when I can't. Then the 1990s fire ripped through her possessions, charring scrapbooks of fan mail and original scripts annotated in her looping cursive. Memory loss soon followed, dementia erasing lines she once delivered flawlessly. Still on set, she knew exactly where to aim each sardonic glare, each flawless retort. After the series, she wrote nightly letters to Heather, mailing them even when every envelope came back, address unknown. April 25, 2024 took her at 85. Among her effects were hundreds of unsent drafts ending with the same sign-off. Wherever you are, I'm proud of you. In an unexpected turn, Heather, now a social worker in Portugal, claimed the estate, framing her mother's final letter on a Lisbon apartment wall. Estrangement yielded at last to understanding. Carmen Argenziano's face is stitched through 1970s cinema and 1980s primetime. Always the lieutenant, the cop, the general whose moral compass guided the hero. By the time Walker called, Carmen knew how to inhabit authority, yet real life felt increasingly out of his control. A divorce carved weekends into paperwork. Guilt sculpted long phone calls with children he struggled to reach through time zones and emotional static. On location, he memorized Shakespeare's sonnets between takes, convinced classic verse could steady minds weary from modern chaos. Castmates recall him quoting Sonnet 30, "I sigh the lack of many a thing I sought," before stepping into scenes about Texas justice. Illness crept in as tremors at signing tables, then as lab results impossible to ignore. He refused pity, scheduling autograph sessions between chemotherapy infusions, telling fans, "I'm living proof the show must go on." On February 10, 2019, at 75, lights faded. His estate's modest worth concealed a quiet fortune in influence. Protégés he coached free of charge. Veterans groups he visited anonymously. Scripts he co-wrote under pseudonyms to boost emerging writers' incomes. Carmen left Hollywood understated, just as he'd walked through it, but countless actors trade lines today because he once whispered, "You've got this," when nobody else believed. Stories end, impact echoes. These 10 Rangers, heroes, mentors, rebels, caretakers, faced demons the best choreographer could never stage fight away. Their sagas remind us that valor resides not only in televised shootouts, but in mailed tuition checks, in hospital bed PSAs, in unfinished carvings bequeathed to museums yet unborn. They battled cancer, corporate indifference, and crushing heartbreak with the same grit that let them stare down imaginary desperados in front of rolling cameras. When we binge old episodes, we celebrate nostalgia, but we also resurrect human beings who gave pieces of themselves so artistry could bridge Friday night living rooms. Their failures caution us about pride untempered. Their resilience urges us to keep punching when life counters. They teach that career peaks and personal valleys often coexist in a single day, and that the measure of a life cannot be confined to rating sheets or column inches. So the next time Walker's pickup roars across your screen, notice the partner's earnest smile, the bartender's sage advice, the uncle's knowing eyes. Behind each moment stands an artist who wrestled bitter nights and still chose to show up before dawn call times, memorizing not just dialogue, but the moral we revisit now. Greatness grows where compassion and courage intersect. Today, we honor not only what they did, but how fiercely they did it, while everything inside them threatened retreat. That is the truest Ranger code. One no villain, no disease, no heartbreak can ever steal. Raise a silent toast to Clarence, Woody, Floyd, Ned, Lou, Noble, Robert, Eloy, Mara, and Carmen. They rode hard, loved imperfectly, gave generously, and fell with dignity. Their stories continue each time a young actor refuses a demeaning role. Each time a fan mail letter thanks a performer for inspiration during chemo. Each time a classroom analyses Uncle Ray's speeches and hears, for the first time, an indigenous worldview treated with respect. Legends ride on, not because they live forever, but because they live so fiercely that forgetting becomes impossible. Let their miles guide ours. And when the sun sets behind the Texas hills, remember, the badge may be a prop, but the bravery was always real.